in this demo, we'd like to implement a shell script which will display the total amount of memory loaded by all the processes which are running a given command with system libraries. So basically on Linux we have binaries with the extension SO, which are shared by different applications, and we can see all the resources loaded by a process. So we'll start by first loading the text editor, and we'll need a command line in order to execute the commands. So with process state, we see all the processes for the current user. Of course, we can display all the running processes in the system, because we don't actually need, we are not sure if the process does own a console and so on. So we'd like to see all the processes, but for now we will just enter this for sure. Okay, so when we display the processes, we see the process ID and the command which is running. So first of all, our script will receive an argument in the command line. So let's start writing the script. The first line should be specifying which interpreter we would like to use. Let's just save this under a name like memsize.sh. I'm going to replace this. I already have the file started before, so I'm going to implement this from scratch. Okay, so the idea is that I need to check that I have one parameter in the command line. So I have an instruction which is checking the exit code of a command, and I have a command which is evaluating the logical condition. Like for instance, the variable hash, it's getting the number of arguments in the command line, and if I get the value of this variable, I should say $hash, and I like this to be equal, and this should be a switch to 1. And then I need to say on the next line, then I can write my script if I have only one parameter. Nevertheless, if I don't have one parameter, I would like to display a message showing the user how the script should be used. Like for instance, the usage of the script should be, and $0 is the name of the script in which I am executing currently. And I would like to say, you know what, let's use the script with an argument that will be the command you want to find. Okay, so if I have one parameter, then I would like to first execute the process state and get the appropriate information out of it. I will have to do a sum with all the sizes of the system libraries loaded by the process. But the problem is that this sum is going to be accessed by a sub shell running when I iterate. So the problem is that I have to export the value of a variable to be able to be accessible to the subshell. Although the subshell will inherit all the environment variables that I'm setting right now in the parent script, it won't be able to change them. So even if I try to export the value of a variable which is not visible to the subshell, is not modifiable by the subshell unless my script exits, I won't be able to change this variable. So the problem is when I try to do the sum with the variable, this won't be modifiable by the subshell. When I refer to the subshells, those are creating when doing a while inside a main script. So in order to overcome this issue, I'd like just to store a value. Like for instance, this is like assigning a variable, but instead of assigning a variable, I will just create a temporary file in here, and for the name of the file I'll use the name of the argument, the name of the process, and the extension for temporary file. Let's call it like this. But in the end, I know for sure that this is gonna be, it has to be removed. So in the end, I will just remove this file that I created previously. Okay, so make sure that I don't leave any trash. Okay, so now that I tested that I have one command, one argument in the command line, and I assigned the value for the total amount of memory in a file, I like to run the process state, display all the processes for all users, regardless of the if they have a console, and then I need to extract the information from here. So I'll read it each line at a time. But the problem is that, as you can see here, the process state is aligning differently the values in case there are dates or numbers and so on. So the number of spaces between columns is variable. Therefore, if I do something like this, I will get something that's not easy to split by space. So I have to eliminate the unnecessary spaces and do a trimming. Okay, sorry, I spell this. If you can see here, it's not easy to read anymore, but it has only one spaces between the columns. Okay, and if I will do this, let's just get rid of this to have less information. I can then try and cut by the delimiter space and get, let's say, the first field, and in this case the first field is empty. But nevertheless, if I try to get the second field, I will get the process ID. Okay. Then if I get the fourth field is the time, but if I get the fifth, then I will see the command. Okay, so what I do here, I will eliminate by calling the command trim the unnecessary spaces. So this works like this. It will eliminate what I call space, and it will let only one of these between each column. Now I can read, let's say I read written while, and I read in a variable called p, because this is going to be the process. So what we do here would be to get all the columns. First, we display all the processes, because a program which is given as argument can be run in multiple instances, in multiple processes. Okay, so what we do here would be to get a process. Okay, so first let's try and get what is the command which is running. So I have the value p, which is the line, and I need to cut this and get the appropriate information for the fourth column. Okay, the problem is that I don't have the ability to call commands unless I send a stream of data to the command. So because I have this in memory, I output the value, but instead of outputting it to the console, I will just send it in a pipe to the cut command in order to cut it and get the fourth field. Actually, this is strange, because when I run this outside in the terminal, it's the fifth field that counts, but when I run it inside the command, it's the fourth. So there is no space for the first element like it is in the shell. Okay, so what I do here would be to cut this and get the appropriate field for the command. Now I have to check whether or not this is my command I'm looking for. So if I test this, the value of the command should be equal to the first argument. And if so, I'm gonna process this. Okay. Sorry. The reason I'm delimiting the value like this is because if the variable has no content, then no operand will be replaced here, and the test will have an issue evaluating the condition. But if I write it like this, even though the command won't have a value, still I will have an operand with an empty value. Okay, so what I do now, I need a process ID. So I define another variable and I call the interpreter to expand the line that's extracting the value of this. So then I output this again, send it to the cut command, but this time I will take the first field, which is the process ID. Of course, for the first line, which is the header, this won't be valid, but anyway it won't equal my first argument, and I will have no issue skipping this, but I'm not skipping this directly. So let's say that I'm up to here and I have the process ID. So the next step would be to call a command, but first let's say my processes. So the command is called process map, and it takes as parameter the process ID. Let's say that I would like to see the map of the bash. In this case, the process map is displaying all the information about the loaded libraries. You can see the address in memory, and you can see the total amount of bytes, of kilobytes used by the library. And this is actually the library. So I would be interested in summing up all the memory used by system libraries. Some system libraries do have an ending version, so I will check for something that contains SO between dots, and that's all. Let's say that's almost correct. Okay, I get the process ID, and now I have to display the process map. So I call the process map with the process ID argument that I received, and then I will have first to eliminate the unnecessary spaces, because this contains also spaces. Okay, yeah, so then after doing so, let me check because the color doesn't look well. So anyway, this is okay nevertheless. So now I can read in another argument, let's call M for memory. And when I read this, first of all, I like to see what's the file that's running, that's loaded. Okay, so I have to output the line that I read before, and then I send this to the cut command to get, in this case, the fourth field. And now I do a case on this, and the idea is that you shouldn't use this in here as delimiters, because case is trying to use this as a template to compare the value with it. So if you don't need those signs to be explicitly present inside your value, then you should not use them. Okay, so I will try to check if my value is something like this, and if so, I need to check this to compute the size. Let's call it B. So the size is in my line that I read before. I need to cut this by the delimiter space and get the second field. If you look here, okay, it's the second field. But the problem is that this will contain the K character. So I will have to go further and then cut from this value, which is splitted by space. I will cut this by the delimiter K and get the first field. Okay, and now I have to add this value to the value computed before. So first of all, the value is in a file, and I set this I created this temporary file. So now, in order to display its value, its content, I will concatenate to the console the content of the file, but instead of outputting this to the console, I'm just replacing with the substitution, I'm replacing the command with what the command displays. So now I have the value inside my variable s. I just have to compute to add to S the size of the current library, and for that I'm calling the expression command to do the arithmetical operation, and I add those two values. In the end, I have to output the value of S to my file. So I echo value of S and redirect with overriding on my temporary file. This has to end with two semicolons, and then I'll have to end the case with case backward, and now I finished this. Okay, so up to here we have visited all the libraries and we did a sum up in the file. In the end, I need, in order to display the value, I don't want to display directly the content of the temporary file, but rather I will have to read it first. So I concatenate the value in my temporary file and I display this in a variable, so that I will be able to say something like total memory loaded with system libraries. Okay, and I will display the value of S, and I know that they are kilobytes. Okay, so this is what my script should produce. In order to run the script, I have to give the right to run the script, so I call the change mode command, adding the execution right for all the users on my script, which is called memsize. And now, in order to make sure that I run the script, I will call it directly from the current directory. And if I don't provide an argument, then the script will say this is the normal usage of the command. If I do provide an argument like the bash, okay, it says that it didn't find any libraries. Okay, let's check what went wrong. First of all, we should make sure that we output the value correctly. Let's just see what happened. It took some time because we outputted all the values, but the problem, it seems to be the number, the difference between indexes. So let's try and see if this works by changing the index as it's supposed to work in the command line. So when I do this, still 0. Okay, let's try and see. So this normally should be 4, but this should be 1. There is no way of debugging the scripts, but what we can do nevertheless is is to output, to do some echoes. So this is one echo that's important, the command. So I would just say the command equals and output the command. And the command, we have an issue because the command is not what we expect to be. Okay, if I get the 5th value, still it's not what we expect to be. Let's just try and see if this works. Now it's an empty value because we exceeded the number of columns, and now it's what we expect to be. So there is a difference between what the process state displays without any argument and the number of columns displayed after. If I check this, this should work, and it works, but then I would have to see how many columns we have when we display the process state with for all the processes, all the users, and so on. So the difference is in the number of columns. But then let's try and see this again. Yeah, we do have more columns than that. Sorry. So this is first, second, third. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's try with 11 here, and still 1 for this. If we cut this by the delimiter space and get the 11th field, this is still wrong. 12th, 13th, okay, 14th, 16th. Yeah, but this is because, yeah, I know. This is because we are not trimming this. Okay, so now let's try 11th. Let's try, as I said, this is the space. I'm outputting, I'm trimming, yeah, I have spacing. So this should be what we expect. So 11 should be in our case. Sorry. But I'm afraid that bash is not here unless it is with, no, it is, but it's like this. Okay, so in case we would like to see all the programs in here, then we should use 11, but in this case perhaps we should use the full path for the bash. Okay, so let's try and run the command again. It will display still none, but if I use the full path of bash, which is normally okay, now the problem is that this is not the first but the second element, I suppose, the process ID. So if I run this again, still it's not able to do this. Okay, let's see it again. So now the command should be okay, but the process ID I have to check. So let's just check the process ID and echo in here the process ID equals to process ID. Okay, so now okay, so basically it says that first I'm not able to create a file. Yeah, that's correct, because I'm creating this in a wrong folder. So the index is okay, but if I have the full path, then I'm not able to create the file. So let's say that I'm creating the a file called .temp. I'm not using the argument as the name of the file. This is going to be a hidden file. So when I use the file, I should remove this from the name of the file. Okay, and in the end I should remove the temporary file as well. And I don't need to display the process ID. This was not the problem actually. So let's try and run this again. Okay, still we have a problem. Now I can display the process ID. So I have the process ID in here, and I would like to check that the process ID is extracting correctly. No. So I still have an issue with this. Let me just clear the console and try to execute this with /bin/bash. And now it says that the problem is it still tries to create the file like so. So I'm outputting here. I removed the name, but let me check and see where I find this. Okay, so this should be one place and the only one place. Now come on, something is wrong with the way I'm doing this. So let me try this again. Just trying to create the file. Echo file created. I should see this. Okay, file was created. Now this is the command. So it didn't output the process ID. Okay, so let's try and display here process found. Process found. Okay. But then let's check the process ID here. Process ID equals process ID, and if we check here, we say the process ID is wrong. Okay, so from the process ID is wrong because we use the wrong columns. So the problem is there is a difference between the order of the columns when you display the process ID with no arguments and when you do it with flags. So let's do the process ID displaying again. The first is the user, but the second is the process ID. So now let's get the second flag here and run the command again. Okay, so now it works fine. Okay, so basically the idea is that you need to be very careful which information you extract, and you need to look first before trying to cut your information. Of course, first you need to look in what you have. So basically I did this mistake because that's the difference between the columns displayed by process ID when you use some flags. But the idea is that nevertheless it's useful to see how we can trace, how you can try to debug or at least to trace what's happening inside your scripts. So this was what you saw. So a mistake like, for instance, when we are using process ID with arguments, with flags, and we want to list all the processes, then we will get the full path of the command. Therefore, we see we are not able to use the first argument, which is the full path, in order to create a temporary file at that location, because perhaps we don't have access to right there. Nevertheless, some other issues with extracting arguments from the given from the resulting output. So basically, if I run this again just to show a clear picture of this, now it takes a while, but it displays the value. In the meantime, if I list also the hidden files, I see that there is no temporary file in here. While the command is running, though, it will be a temporary file. So, thanks.